Over the last 5 years, Hyundai has rolled out several all-new products and even a new name. We are of course talking about the Staria, which started in our previous big test. Now, you've heard our assessment on it when compared to its main rival, the Super Grandia Elite, but we're here to find out this time around how it stands on its own. And that's why we're here in Tagaytay to find out all about it. Now, I know that vans are best appreciated when you're seated at the back, but probably from time to time you're gonna be here in front. Aesthetically, it is wonderful. It is like a lounge in here. You got smooth, sweeping curves, no sharp angles, no silly lines or any of that. It is very clean and very, very uncluttered. It's also pretty versatile too. You got several cubbies here. You even have one right in front of you. You even get 3 door pockets, which is pretty interesting. So you really won't run out of space even here at the front of the Staria. Now, moving a little bit to the center here, got your touchscreen, and it's got wireless Apple CarPlay, and you can't actually connect it straight via the USB. You have to use the wireless system. But thankfully, your battery is not going to be drained too much because it has a wireless charger. Granted, wireless chargers don't exactly charge as fast as ported chargers, but it is what it is. Moving down a little bit, you got this. So I don't know, guys, what is your take on push button transmissions or electronic gear selectors? Do you like them? Do you not like them? The advantage here is though that it does clear up a lot of space, so that allows me to sort of move around, and you got this open space down here for a little bit extra storage. And speaking of storage space, you got this huge center console down here. If you open it one level, that's going to be your cup holder. And the next level is a huge storage bin. You can store I don't know, a GoPro perhaps, or maybe even, I don't know, a bunch of bananas probably. I mean, there's a lot to put in here. So storage definitely is no problem in the Staria. But if it sounds that I'm praising the Staria's interior a lot, there are a few details that I wish were a little bit better. And we start off with the ergonomics. If you're gonna look for the electronic parking brake, which this model does have, if you're left-handed, the position of the electronic parking brake is fine because it's on my left-hand side. But for some people, they might end up looking for it for a while. But my biggest gripe here would be the cabin materials. The interior looks fantastic. The front looks fantastic. But once you start touching a couple of things, that's when it kind of lets the side down a little bit. Now, yes, some vans also have plasticky interiors, but it doesn't sound hollow. Another thing is, yes, these bins are great. I mean, I just put stuff all over the place, but listen to this. Now, granted, you're not going to do a flex test on any other car, I mean, when you're buying it, but it just doesn't feel like the price tag it's asking for when you start touching things. Okay, if I sounded a little mean there are a couple of redeeming features. So you got your bum chillers right here, and it's got 3 levels. No one's really going to use the seat heater in this country anyway. You also have your 360-degree view camera. Very handy for any vehicle this size. Of course, it's automatic climate control, and you can control the AC vents from here at the front. Now, over here in front of me, of course, is more digitalization. You get a digital dash, you get a digital tach, and speaking of which, those 2 rings in front, when you flick the signal, it turns into a camera. Well, it's a video feed from the cameras mounted on the side mirrors. Sort of like a blind spot monitoring system, but better because you can see more of the side. Another thing, I am personally a sucker for sunroofs, and I do appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. And there's more at the back. Now, the second row, as you can see, comes with ottoman seats. And over in the third row, you got a good old bench. There's no 4th row. It's not quite a Super Grandia or any other larger van. Now, this being a van, of course, you can slide the leg room just about everywhere, really. And also, you can adjust these for tilt and the backrests are also power adjustable. You also get seat coolers here at the back, which is quite frankly awesome. Another thing about these seats, you can do a full recline with a push of a button. Now, it goes pretty far back, and as I mentioned, it's got ottomans, so you got these leg rests right here. So really, if you're alone here in the second row seats, this is a pretty good place to be in. Also, I love these huge windows. So some people probably think, okay, huge windows means there's a lot of heat coming in. Perhaps the solution to that would be just turn up the AC and also roll down these nice window shades. You also get a Bose sound system, by the way, and you got a couple of speakers in the front here at the back to give you a really good surround sound system. Oh, and as I mentioned, I am a sucker for sunroofs, so you'll have to pardon me for a bit because I want to show you something. You also get a glass roof here in the second row. Now, it's blazing hot right now, so I really wouldn't recommend opening it. A couple of my friends did point out that they would have wished like a cup holder was a little closer to them, especially when they're in recline mode. And to some extent, I kind of do understand where they're coming from, because you're already comfortable in the van, you're already lied down, or you're already in this position. You know, to sort of reach around for a couple of things, well, it's a little bit extra effort. I know it's a bit of a first world problem, but you know, that's it. That's what it is. Now, moving down here, you got a pair of USB ports and an extra little shelf right down here. And so that's the second row cover. What is space like in the third row of seats? So what's it like here in the Staria's final row? Well, the bench, well, it's about the width of a subcompact sedan, and with 3 people on board, it feels about the same way. Of course, you still get these huge windows, so you get a lot of light coming in, and if things get a little bit too hot, you can pull these up. As for other things, yes, you can recline them, although this is the maximum recline movement. Also, you got 2 USB ports back here, got a pair of cup holders on each side, and a tiny cubby hole as well. But if you still think this isn't enough leg room, you can actually slide this thing all the way back. Although it's going to be at the expense of 2 things. One is your headroom. I mean, it's still about this much, but if you're taller than me, which you probably are, it's probably not going to be enough. And the cargo area, which has practically disappeared behind me already. Of course, it wouldn't be a complete van review if we didn't take a look at the cargo area. These things are made for hauling after all. Now, granted, anything behind the third row of seats, you don't have much space left. Now, you can flip the seat bottoms up, so that means you're gonna have to put your stuff on the floor right in front of these backrests. But the thing is, if you do that, you can only carry 4 people at a time. The same goes if you fold these seats. It's like, no matter what you do, this thing is always gonna be in the way, and it'll restrict your carrying capacity. Unfortunately, this thing doesn't stow away or fold away, and really the only way to make up more space back here is to remove it. And if we slide the seat all the way back, you really won't be able to put anything behind here, and the space down here isn't really large enough to slide in even tiny items. Right, so we've covered the interior and all the other bits. But we haven't talked about the Staria's main attraction just yet, and that, of course, is the design. I mean, just look at it. You got these huge taillights back here, and it's all LED. You see these tiny diodes all the way inside. That is an interesting bit of design. You also got this huge window. It's got a huge glass area, even on the side and at the front. It would have been interesting, actually, if they integrated a split tailgate for this, but of course, it's okay that it doesn't. It is a van after all. Now, this being the top-of-the-line model, you also get sort of copper bronze trimming all over the place, and that is exclusive for this variant. You also see some copper bronze right on here. Even says H-Track, which is Hyundai's all-wheel drive system. Now we go over to the side. It's a continuation of these huge windows. It's great when you're inside because a lot of light comes in, and it really gives you that feeling of extra space inside. What is interesting is like the door skins actually, they're about the size of a passenger car. It's pretty amusing and interesting design quirk there. Oh, also the wheels. Oh, they're an interesting pattern too. I do quite like it. It is pretty unique. It's a sort of a mix of retro and modern right here. I do wish this sort of wheel design does appear on more Hyundai products. Oh, look, more carbon bronze here on the door handles. And we now go to the front of the Staria. It's very, very distinct. I mean, you got this LED strip that runs across the entire front end of the car. I mean, you guys have probably seen a lot of Starias on the road, but the shock factor is still there, definitely. Let's be honest, it's a real head turner. Well, I'm gonna be very upfront about this and say that this is perhaps the most car-like van that I have ever driven. Now, the reason why this is so easy to drive and so car-like to drive is the steering mechanism is electric. It's got an electronic power steering system. So that means the steering is incredibly light. Sure, it doesn't give much feedback, but you drive one of these things because you need to get somewhere, not because you need to do some canyon carving or do some laps in Clark International Speedway. Although, sure, it helps that this thing has all-wheel drive, but for the most part, it is a rear-wheel drive system, but that only kicks in if there's slippage detected at the back. Then dun magsasalo the front wheels. Another thing I have to point out is it's not necessarily about the car's driving dynamics or whatnot, but rather its visibility. It's got huge windows. It's absolutely humongous. It actually reaches up to my thigh. And that means I can see clearer down the curbside. I can easily parallel park this thing. And again, it's so easy to park because the steering is so light. Now, right now, it sounds like I'm just singing the praises of the Staria all the way. There are one or two things I have to talk to you about. The good handling does come at a certain expense, and that is ride comfort. Now, I'm not saying this thing is like a pogo stick on wheels, but I was honestly expecting it to ride a bit softer. I mean, it looks so futuristic. It just, you know, it looks like it came from Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever that game was called. So I was expecting a magic carpet ride in this thing because it looks so advanced, but it doesn't. If you remember our big test from a while back when we compared it to the Super Grandia, we were genuinely surprised that it was the Super Grandia that was more comfortable. But the ride isn't my biggest gripe here. Oh no, there's something else. And it's the performance. Now, it's not slow, it's not underpowered. It has a 2.2-liter 4-cylinder turbo diesel, just like most of Hyundai CRDI crossovers and SUVs. But it doesn't feel underpowered in any way. My problem with it is the throttle response. And I'm gonna punch it right now and judge for yourself. It really takes its sweet time to build up the boost and send you forward. And if you're in an overtaking situation, that hint of lag, that delay in response, is gonna cause a few problems if you're overtaking uphill, and especially if you're overtaking an 18-wheeler uphill. Let's not end this bit on a rather disappointing note. Let's point out the Staria's active safety features. It has stuff like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, blind departure warning, and of course a 360-degree view cam in case you still couldn't see out these massive windows. When it comes to active safety features, this is stuff you'd get in a luxury sedan before, and if I mentioned this about 15 years ago to a Starex owner, just laugh at me. I mean, this is how advanced this thing is. So to sum up the Staria, we're gonna run through its pros and cons, and one definite pro, of course, the exterior design. I mean, love it or hate it, it is definitely distinct and it's very daring, especially for what's basically a commercial vehicle. You won't see any other manufacturer do this, and you know, props to Hyundai for being this brave about a van and even dropping the Starex name in the first place. So what a way to debut your name, right? Another pro, of course, would be the interior space. Now, granted, it doesn't have 4 rows of seats, but because it only has 3, you can literally stretch out no matter where you're seated. I also do quite like the dual pane sunroof and the large windows. I mean, really, it's already spacious inside and it's even airier thanks to the large glass house. Another pro, of course, would be the fuel efficiency. Now, vans aren't exactly known for fuel efficiency, but the transmission on this one definitely helps, and the 2.2-liter turbo diesel. And of course, the interior design is just as striking as the exterior design. I mean, it feels like a lounge in there, especially with that blue lighting. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, you should really see this at night. It is like a lounge. And thanks to those seats, you can really stretch out back there. You got those ottomans and whatnot. So inside, it's all about the ambiance, and outside, it's all about making a statement. But that brings us to our cons. Now, I do wish there were better cabin materials inside. Yes, this is still a commercial vehicle at the end of the day, but you're paying about 3 million pesos for this, and you kind of want to have some premium touch materials in the dashboard and on the door sills and whatnot. Another thing would be the throttle response. Now, I do wish it was a little snappier. Granted, the all-wheel drive might be a factor here, but it really takes a while. Even if you switch it to sport mode, it doesn't matter what mode you're in, it really takes its time before it switches down a gear and then it just zooms forward. I mean, it's enough, but again, that throttle response really needs to be improved on. And then there's the cargo area. Yes, there's a lot of space inside, but again, that third row design really limits its practicality and its cargo area versatility. So if Hyundai can find a way to stow those seats away, then even better, but that's what we have, at least for now. I will admit that I was really hyped up when I was able to borrow this Hyundai Staria because it just looks great. I mean, just look at it. It's like it comes out from Cyberpunk 2077. But the design aside, again, I want to feel like I'm paying for 2,930,000 pesos when I get inside. Yes, it looks fantastic to look at, but some details just kind of let it down a bit, particularly, again, the throttle response and the materials and the cargo area. As an MPV, probably it's great. As a luxury transport vehicle, it's fantastic. But as a van, it needs a little bit more improvement. And because of that, and this is going to be a bit controversial, I am going to have to rate the Staria a 7.5 out of 10.